Ladies and gentlemen, here in this video, we need to get into your big events coming this week, some of your economic data coming out, different Fed speakers, some of the headlines from the Middle East, but most importantly, Tesla just launched the Robotaxi. And it looks to be, at this point, a big success. And I think coming tomorrow and throughout this week, we may get some rapid price appreciation in Tesla stock. Don't be surprised if that happens. But ladies and gentlemen, we are first going to start with some of your Middle East updates, what's going on that front, and take a look at futures. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. This is a very important video. I'm going to give you an update of this Middle East conflict, what's going on right now, some of the big news. I mean, there's really been a lot of news every day in this conflict that may be important for markets from a financial perspective, not just a loss of life and war perspective, because it has to do with energy. It has to do with oil. That's what Wall Street cares about in this conflict. Now, we just so happen to be big investors in Tesla. It's yet to be determined if a larger conflict, a larger spike in oil prices would actually be a positive catalyst for Tesla from a demand perspective. People, I mean, for better or for worse, when gas goes up, they think it's going to last a long time. Like, a lot of people don't understand how oil and gas prices actually work, where if oil goes up for a week or two, comes back down, like gas prices come back down, right? A lot of people don't fully understand that, and I think mainstream media may actually help the, the push to EVs if gas prices go higher, because they're going to, again, fearmonger you and say gas prices are going to be high for a long time, blah, blah, blah. We could go on and on about that specific situation. Maybe it's a positive for Tesla, maybe it's not. Now, there are some headlines coming out that do not sound great, especially some of the sleeper cell headlines. We'll get into that in just a moment. But first things first, I want to say, despite the fall that you had in Bitcoin and Ethereum, I mean, you fell initially on the comments earlier of the Strait of Hormuz getting choked off. You kind of leveled out, and then you fell again on some of these headlines that I will share with you in this video. But now you're back up again. Futures opened, and there was a buy program that did come out and buy markets. Now, futures are still red. S&P futures are down about 1/3 of 1%, but I would have expected threatening to cut off the flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. You were going to be down more than this. So take it for what it will, as you will. It's like 7 o'clock on a Sunday, okay? It's just futures, but that looks like a sign of strength in the broader markets. Like maybe that deteriorates or something tomorrow morning, but as of now, that looks actually pretty damn strong. Now, as well as that, in this video, we will discuss some of your major economic data and events coming this week. You actually have a speech from Powell on Tuesday and on Wednesday, with likely, if we're going to get any new information, it's going to be on Tuesday. And that's going to be important. Fed officials, because since the Fed meeting, I can't recall another Fed meeting that the Fed got this much criticism. Even myself, like, I've been pretty much in alignment with the Fed throughout this last couple of years. Okay, you can always critique the Fed here and there a little bit, but the Fed this last meeting changed the way that they do monetary policy, right? The Fed went from a data-dependent approach to an opinion-based approach. This new opinion-based approach is a disaster. And not just myself, but many others have called on the Fed to say, what are you doing? Like, this makes no sense. We don't have an inflation problem anymore. Why are you not cutting rates? You've had Fed Waller that came out and said we should look at cutting rates in July or start the process of cutting rates again. You had Fed Daily that came out, Daily, that said, well, the Fed's in a pretty good place. We can wait and see. And she was thinking more in the fall, the Fed would like cut rates. So not the July meeting, but likely the September meeting after that. So you're starting to get a little bit of a division within the Fed. Okay, I think part of it has to do with the outside criticism that the Fed is receiving. I've never seen so much criticism from the Fed for one specific Fed meeting. Again, going from data dependent to opinion-based policymaking is, I mean, your 10, 12 opinions are dictating what happens with 300 plus million Americans' interest rates. Like, that seems kind of reckless. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Thus, I think the Fed is incompetent. The point in making this, though, is, or saying this, is we hear from Jerome Powell on Tuesday. We hear from many Fed officials this week, and we'll see what the narrative starts to kind of develop as. With that said, though, markets are still near all-time highs. You have Iran threatening to cut off the Strait of Hormuz. You have the Fed that is incompetent, that is compromised. I don't know which word you want to use. I think they both kind of apply, unfortunately. And the markets are still near all-time highs. I would say that is a big positive. Now, for Tesla stock specifically, we also have a lot of videos coming out of Robotaxi rides, and these are pretty incredible. If there's any reason for Tesla stock to be higher tomorrow, it's probably going to be because of the launch of the Robotaxi. Here you have this video that Elon Musk reposted from Zach on X. He posts the video and says, "Our second Robotaxi ride done. It's smoother than a human driver. Absolutely amazing work by Tesla's AI team. Well done." You also have this video that's about 13 minutes long of from Sawyer Merritt in what looks like his first Robotaxi ride. And the car did phenomenal. It's kind of cool. Even in the back, it says arrival at your destination, whatever time. You can change your settings, all of that. So pretty cool. I'm obviously not going to play the whole 13-minute long video, but I mean, there's some pretty heavy, weird traffic in this specific area. And I do realize it is geofenced and likely highly trained for this specific area. But I mean, this is a massive step in the AI direction for Tesla. Like, let's face it here, guys. It is one thing to say, you know, Tesla is going to have a Robotaxi one day. They're going to have Optimus one day. They're going to have XYZ one day. It's a completely different thing to actually have it now. Okay, because Wall Street is going to have to start modeling what the numbers could look like for Robotaxi. They're going to have to say, what is it going to look like next year if we have 5,000 Robotaxis out on the road? What about 10,000, 20, 25, 30,000? What about even 1,000? That's 400 more. That's almost 2x more Robotaxis, if you will, than Waymo. Waymo only has about 600 out on the road. So whatever your numbers are, I don't personally have my own opinion yet. Like, I want to hear what Elon suggests as far as what the scalability is going to look like. That could come from a tweet on X. That could come from, you know, the earnings for Tesla, which is, you're guaranteed going to hear a lot about the Robotaxi then. But again, no matter what the number is, you have to start modeling this. And that's what changes the fundamental value for Tesla. Like, for an example, when you typically look at like PE multiples, okay, some people look at the trailing 12-month PE. Most people look at forward PEs, okay? So what a lot of people did when NVIDIA was really starting to rally, like their justification for buying NVIDIA was not the next year's PE, but the year after that, or 2027 or 2028 PE multiple. And that's based on growth. So now that you have this big growth driver for Tesla, which is going to be the Robotaxi, you could start to say, hey, 2028, what does Robotaxi look like? How profitable is it going to be? How many are going to be out on the roads? What's the revenue contribution going to be to Tesla's business? Are we bringing in like tens of billions of dollars of revenue? That's a lot of growth for a company that does about $100 billion of revenue a year. Okay? You could start to get to some pretty crazy numbers, let alone Optimus. again, what's the profitability look like? That's probably the bottom line, most important thing. How does this add to PEs and all of that? But analysts are going to have to start modeling this. Now, we did see some pretty unusual option activity last week, okay? Especially Thursday and Friday, like billions of dollars in option activity that was very bullish. It wouldn't surprise me if Tesla stock does very well coming tomorrow. Now, you can also see the Robotaxi app that is really nice. Sawyer Merritt says it's a good design, easy to use. He says, I haven't experienced any bugs or lagging. I can control certain car functions from it, such as pulling over, calling support, music, etc. It's a good first iteration. You can actually see the car like traveling out on the roads, tells you your arrival time and, you know, all the other details. So definitely looks like a successful launch from at least my perspective. Again, question is, what's the scalability look like? So with all of this said, guys, I do think this is going to be a positive catalyst for Tesla. I do think Tesla stock is going to go much higher based on the Robotaxi. Now, could there be short-term disruptions? Of course. But this is the start of the end. Okay, this is the start of the AI revolution for Tesla in a real way. And the end is going to be somewhere Optimus past that, okay? It's going to take decades for Tesla to grow into its fully mature business to get to the place where like Apple is today. So this is the start of something much larger for Tesla. Even from a technical perspective, it looks like the stock is ready to explode to the upside as well. So let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. I do think Tesla could have a really good week this week. I think the stock could be in the 400s pretty soon. Now let's get into some of these Middle East headlines that I think you need to know that could be important for markets, and then break down the major events coming this week. You actually have a couple of earnings that you need to keep on your radar coming out at different points throughout this week, including FedEx and Nike, which are, again, FedEx is kind of like the bellwether of the economy, as it's been deemed over the last couple of decades. And Nike is like the most heavily tariffed company in the world, from my understanding. It's up there, okay? And how is Nike balancing profitability, passing on costs of tariffs to consumers, things like that. Now, breaking news that came out this afternoon: Iran has threatened to unleash attacks by sleeper cells inside the US if it was attacked. Isfahan facilities are probably still intact and must be addressed to prevent the development of nuclear weapons, CNN citing US sources. Military and intelligence officials have found signs that Iran-backed militias are preparing to attack US bases in Iraq and possibly Syria, a US official tells the New York Times. And Iran says U.S. decided to destroy diplomacy, and Iranian military will decide timing, nature, and scale of its response. So again, those are some of your major headlines. There's a lot of smaller ones. I will keep you guys informed if there's anything that's going to move the markets. But again, let's take a look at futures together before we wrap up this video. Futures are really not reacting all too much versus what I thought could have been really bad. Now, we are going to have some pretty important economic data this week as well. Starting off on Monday, S&P Global Composite PMI, manufacturing PMI, and services PMIs will be coming out for June. Existing home sales for May and month over month. And then Fed Bowman, Fed Goolsbee, and Fed Kugler speak. So we heard from Fed Daily that is more in the lines of she wants to wait and see. Okay, not a huge shocker. Fed Waller came out and said, hey, we should start cutting rates in July. So there is a division that seems to be taking place at the Fed. These Fed speeches may be a little bit more important than they have been before. How far is that division? How many people are in Fed Waller's camp, or how many people are in the Fed Daily camp? The Fed has received more backlash for this Fed meeting than any other Fed meeting I can recall. Because most people say, hey, if you're data dependent, you should be cutting rates. Now the Fed is moving away from data dependency, and they are moving into a more opinion-based way of making Fed decisions. They're getting a lot of criticism for that. Like, even I have been Team Powell for over the years, but now I'm not Team Powell anymore. Following this Fed conference, this last one, at least I'm not like super Powell, Team Powell anymore, maybe is the best way to put it. Like, he lost quite a bit of credibility in my eyes from moving away from the data dependent approach and moving into an opinion based approach. Everyone has opinions. Everyone. You can't argue with the facts of what's going on. And that's what Powell and the Fed is doing. Now, on Tuesday, you will have a speech from Fed Jerome Powell, I believe in front of the Senate, where he's going to be grilled on these things. The Fed should be cutting rates. I don't think he's going to get an easy pass on Tuesday and on Wednesday. He speaks both days. Now, you will get the CB Consumer Confidence and Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index that will be coming out as well. And then the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price year over year and month over month. Wednesday, again, another speech from Fed Jerome Powell. That's really the only catalyst that day. On Thursday, you get Fed Barkin that speaks in the morning. Durable goods orders month over month. Last month was a big negative number, negative 6.3%. You're expecting positive 4.5%. So expecting a big recovery there. Chicago Fed National Activity Index and the GDP growth rate quarter over quarter final estimates for Q1. Expecting those to come in negative 0.2%. Initial jobless claims will also be coming out. Fed Hammock speaks, pending home sales, Kansas Fed Composite Index, Manufacturing Index, a lot of secondary data as well. But the big story likely will be durable goods orders and that final number for Q1 GDP. If it's revised up and only comes in at like negative 0.1%, I'm sure stocks are going to like that. Now, Friday, you're going to get core PCE price index month over month, expecting 0.1%. Again, Fed's preferred measure of inflation and not expecting any inflation. This would be 3 months in a row of no inflation, following what is typically a seasonally high reading in January and in February. And beyond that, you go back to November, you were at 0.1%, December was 0.2%. So if you exclude the normally high, January and February PCE, I mean, there is literally no inflation. Like, you're going to be running below target. I mean, if you look at November, which was 0.1%, we can do these calculations real quick. December, 0.2%. January, 0.3%. February, 0.5%. March, 0.1%. April, 0.1%. And presumably we get another 0.1% this week. You're looking at 1.4% total inflation since November. Divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're looking at an average of 0.2% core PCE for the last 7 months. Extrapolate that out, times that by 12, that's 2.4% core PCE. Judging off of the 0.1% readings we're getting, like, if that is, if we get that this week, we get that next month, it's dramatically going to start bringing down the average here, okay? And if you actually go to the decimal point, this number is going to be right around 2%, because a lot of these numbers were revised up, right? And you always get a round number. So there is no inflation problem, long story short. Again, that's really why it's hard to be Team Powell after this last press conference, because they don't care about the data anymore. They're just they're going based on their opinions. And that, to me, seems very flawed. Now, this week is actually going to be a really big week as far as earnings as well. Monday and after hours, you're going to get KB Homes. Tuesday pre-market, you're going to get Carnival. Tuesday and after hours, you get FedEx and BlackBerry. FedEx is huge. FedEx was normally seen as like the bellwether of the economy. And, if they have good things to say, then that's great. If they have bad things to say, it's something you should take notice of. But FedEx has really had bad things to say for years now, and it hasn't equated to a recession. It hasn't equated to any larger economic issues. Wednesday, you're going to get General Mills and Paychex pre-market, and then in after hours, Micron and Jeffries. Micron obviously kind of in that AI story, so keep that in mind. Thursday pre-market, Walgreens and McCormick, as well as some others. And then Thursday and after hours, Nike. Nike's going to be a big one. How is tariffs affecting their business? Do they plan to pass costs on to consumers? They already raised some prices. Are consumers paying those higher prices? Just in general, how are they navigating the tariff environment? That is the big question, really, for Nike and even to a lesser extent, FedEx. Now, FedEx does international shipping, obviously, but a lot of what they do is based in the U.S. Nike pretty much manufactures like all of their goods in the East Asian market that was the most heavily hit from tariffs. So Nike, if Nike can manage to do just fine during this tariff situation, other companies are going to be able to do just fine as well. Obviously, quote me on that. I'm not a financial advisor. Anything can happen. But ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your day. If you guys want to come trade with us live every time I make trades, check out that link down below in the description of this video. We're finding hidden gems over there that are underlooked by Wall Street, that are smaller cap names that are massive opportunities. I have a lot of due diligence coming out tonight on 2 of these specific companies, one of which could explode at any moment that literally nobody is looking at. On StockTwits, its feed gets like 1 or 2 messages every day, which is like nothing. Like, it's so underlooked. It's crazy for the potential and opportunity that it has. So link down below in the description of this video. You guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.